Welcome to High Intensity Truth. I am attorney Eric Ruth. I am here for the people, and I am joined by Nicole Harmony. Nicole is going to be deposed today. No lies, no bullshit, just the unfiltered, brutal honesty about the trauma she has faced and whether she has actually done the work to overcome it. She has been told she is going to be deposed today. She's going to be placed under oath, and we're going to find out how she got over her trauma if she did. The objective of this podcast is to find real solutions to humanity's anxiety. Nicole, do you swear or affirm to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth about your life and your trauma?
I do.
Good. Let's begin. Who did you come out of and where?
Who did I come out of? My mom, Susie Bruce, and I came out of her in Dallas, Texas, July 10th, 1973.
All right. And did you have a father that was in the home?
Yes, I did.
Okay. What trauma did you experience, Nicole?
My dad was emotionally unavailable to me as a child. So he worked all the time. He was a pastor's father. This is something that we didn't discuss before, but he was a pastor's son, And so he didn't know what to do, what he was not taught. So his dad was emotionally unavailable to him. His grandfather was emotionally available to his dad. So he came into the marriage with two existing children and didn't know how to be a dad because his father didn't know how to be a dad.
Okay. How did the traumas you experience affect your life?
That was stapled to every single choice that I made: career, relationship, friendship. It gets you to a point of not feeling worthy of love, of attention, of really anything good in your life because the person that co-created you didn't give you that attention, didn't give you that love. And so it gave me the belief that I didn't deserve it. I wasn't worthy of it. So relationships, career choices, friendships, just any kind of different decision that I made, it was stable to it.
Okay. So as far as your relationship go, how exactly did it manifest in those relationships?
Well, I chose emotionally unavailable men for my partners. And it wasn't until this last partner that I really took a good look at myself. I had already started kind of doing the work. There was an exercise that was given to me in a book that I was reading, How to Keep the Love That You Receive or something that you find. And it was, you listed out all of your partners and you put in two categories, the good qualities and then the bad qualities. And then you circled. And then so you could see the pattern that was created throughout your life. Now, I started doing this when I was 45, so I had quite a different pattern already created. And it wasn't until this last relationship, that's when I did, the psychedelics, the psilocybin, the ayahuasca, and really started to turn inward. That's when I started training to be a coach. That's when I started doing the continuing education on trauma-informed and how to create and hold space for others. That's when I really started to break those patterns myself. So, yeah.
Now, as far as your professional life, how did your trauma manifest at work?
Wow. So I was 17 years in the movie industry. That is the most toxic career that you could ever choose for yourself. You go onto a set and it's like you're moving before the day even starts and you don't get time for yourself. You don't get time to sit down and eat. I had not an eating disorder, but I had digestive issues because I was eating under stress all the time. I was in the wardrobe department. We had to have everybody ready to go back to set. So it was like eat 10 minutes, 15 minutes. That was it. And then you're off again. And then also nothing was ever 100% right with your job every single day. And a lot of it fell on wardrobe. And I didn't realize it until I was in Mexico in 2021. Again, when I was doing the training for the coaching, that I realized that the most toxic relationship and the longest toxic relationship that I had in my life was the 17 years that I had as that career, because that really took me to a dark, dark place of not feeling worthy, not feeling important, not feeling good enough. I mean, it just confirmed all the beliefs that I created when I was a child.
If I ask people closest to you, what would they say was the biggest way that your trauma affected them?
Affected them. I would say that because of the work that I've done on myself, that I'm going back to my family and holding them accountable for things that happened when I was a kid and I didn't have any choices. It was supposed to be led by the elders. And so I'm holding them accountable for things that happened to me when I was a kid. I think that's probably the most difficult because nobody wants to be held accountable, right? Nobody wants to face their shadows. And I'm really holding up a mirror and doing a lot of reflection to my family. It's been difficult, but we're finally over the hump. But there was a few years where I was going through my process and there was projection happening, but now I'm able to hold it in a different space, in a different light, with a different tone, given the skill set that I have learned over the last few years. So yeah, I would say that.
Okay. Would you say that you've overcome your trauma, or did you just get better at hiding it?
No, I definitely overcome it. The way that I know that's just probably what you're going to ask, but the way that I know is that it doesn't dysregulate my nervous system anymore. So I check in with my nervous system a lot. If I get triggered, that's what I tell my clients. And of course, that's what I tell myself. If I get triggered, I check in with my nervous system. What's happening within me? And now when things trigger me, I check in with the nervous system and I'm okay. You know, things that used to trigger me are no longer triggering me. And if they do trigger me, then I know that there's a lesson to be learned and I immediately turn inward and I immediately take a pause and I take a breath and I ask myself the difficult questions. If you are still living and you're still attaching the victim mentality to that trauma, then is much more difficult and it's going to dysregulate your nervous system. Does that resonate or make sense?
Makes sense to me. What does it feel like when you're triggered? And what are your triggers?
Right now, my biggest trigger is the word narcissist and the attack on the masculine right now. Because I work predominantly with men, those are two of my really big triggers. And I think it's stemming from my dad and how he has mild cognitive impairment. It's getting worse and worse. And so there's less opportunity for him to go back to those childhood memories and do some healing. I've actually done a lot of healing around with him. It's heartbreaking when you can see your dad be in that vulnerable space and knowing that what you experienced in your life was because he wasn't nurtured the way that he needed to be. I don't know if that answers your question. I kind of get on a tangent.
Fine. So I want to know how did you overcome your trauma?
So, I mean, it started with me when I first recognized it as a trauma. You know, I had to finally make that identification and
What
realize.
was that breaking point for you when you finally were able to identify trauma and be self-aware of it?
When I was 35 years old, I went to an emotional healer on a whim. She uncovered this suppressed memory that I had when I was 8 years old. It wasn't sexual abuse or anything like that. And that started my journey. It really did. Physical manifestations that I had on my body started to disappear. Like I had a wart on my finger that was burned off 3 times by a dermatologist and it kept growing back. That sucker turned black as soot, sunk back into my skin right before my eyes 2.5 hours after that session ended, and it never returned. Here's the finger that it was on. So that was the start. And it started to shatter the illusion that I had a perfect childhood because I had both parents in the home. I didn't recognize that my dad was emotionally unavailable until I started doing this journey. Until I started reading the books. You know, this was before social media was really big. So books were still something to be discovered. And I started reading books about, for some reason, you know, I was guided towards reading a book on emotionally unavailable fathers. And then it would list the outcomes that the daughters would have. And I was like, oh my God, that's me. That's me. That's me. Oh my gosh. And so then I started just reading. And I started asking questions. I started asking questions of the family. And one of my sisters was like, you're crazy, you know, but you can't tell somebody how they felt and their emotions because that's their own. You can't gaslight them and tell them that they're crazy, right? And so I had to just kind of back away, and I just continued to read and continue to educate. And it kept coming up in relationships. And that's when I just decided to do kind of like a relationship vacation and be like, I got to get myself straight before I can go in to another one, because it's not fair to that person to me bringing in my baggage. I need to unpack it first.
That relationship that you took a vacation from, did you end it because of that purpose, or was it ended because of another reason?
I mean, there was a whole slew of reasons, but it was more about knowing that I was worthy of what he was giving me. And he couldn't provide me anything more than what he knew how to provide. So it wasn't like, I can't be with you anymore. It was more like, I'm worthy of more, and I know it now because of the work that I've done on myself. I know that I'm worthy of the level of love that I know I deserve.
Where did you go for your education?
HCI, which is Health Coaching Institute. It was a dual program for life and health coaching. And then they have an advanced program, transformational coaching method, which is where I've learned all of my trauma techniques, the NLP. What I loved about my institute and the program that I went through is that our founders went to 2 or 3 different institutions to learn how to coach. They came out not knowing how to coach because they were not taught. And so they've taken all the golden nuggets from those institutions that they've attended, and even continuing educations, and they've put it into this nice little perfect little program. And so it's not the typical health and life coaching. I came out of it with these NLP techniques and hypnotherapy type of thing. What's that?
NLP.
Neuro-linguistic programming.
Can you explain that?
Sure. So basically, it is kind of repatterning the brain. So our brain is wired to protect ourselves, right? And when we are a sovereign child, when we're a sovereign baby, all we're looking for is validation that we're safe and validation that we're loved. But as we go into society and we have the traumas that occur, because we all have traumas, like you and I were discussing, we all have traumas. It's just, how does it dysregulate the body's physiology? And it's not society's job to say that, it's the body's. The body decides when it's been dysregulated. So basically, the brain starts to experience these distortions whenever the traumas occur. So the neurolinguistic programming is a way to repattern the brain, creating the new neural pathways in order to create more healthy behaviors, habits, and patterns. Because when we have the distortions, that's where the self-sabotage comes from. That's where the unhealthy behaviors, habits, and patterns. Our belief system is created between the ages of 0 and 8 years old. So past 8 years old, that's when the behaviors start, the bad behaviors, the bad patterns, the bad habits, the good and the bad. I mean, it's a duality. So yeah, the neuro-linguistic programming is just a way to help repattern the brain.
What would you say was the moment you realized that you had either overcome or gotten past or no longer affected by your trauma in a way that you could say, I can live some semblance of a normal life now? What was that moment like for you, and when was it?
I would say it was when I said goodbye to that toxic relationship in 2022. I mean, he had said the same thing to me over and over again in our 9-year back and forth situationship. And I looked at him and I said, okay, I'm done. And that was it. That was it. I haven't spoken to him in almost 3 years. And I knew right then and there, I was like, you did it. You did it.
What did you start doing after that?
When I left him?
What does your life look like after you could say that you effectively overcome your trauma? How was your life different than before?
I'm more peaceful. I don't have to go to sleep at night wondering how he feels about me, if he's going to leave, if I'm going to find some random text message from a random woman that he was on a dating app with. It's just been much more peaceful, much more trusting and confidence in myself and the partners that I'm going to choose in the future. I will say I pseudo dated this one guy. I think it was a year after And I recognized how he dysregulated my nervous system. He was actually too available for me. Like he was being like overly available and dysregulating my nervous system. And I openly had a conversation with him. I was like, hey, I need you to pull back because it's dysregulating me. I'm not used to having a man that is emotionally available. And he couldn't do it. And I was like, I appreciate you for what you're doing and what you're trying to give. But if you could meet me where I'm at and we could work on this together, then that would be great. And he couldn't do it. And I said, I appreciate the fact that you can't. If you can't be, I don't want you to be somebody who you're not. So this is just not a good fit. And it ended.
All right. What was the hardest part about doing the work to overcome your trauma?
Facing those shadows, really facing the shadows. I mean, again, I've done 5 ayahuasca ceremonies now and a psilocybin ceremony. And if anything, that will make you face your darkness, your shadows. And then not knowing in the beginning.
I'll say real quick, explain that ayahuasca. What does that entail?
Ayahuasca. So ayahuasca, you ingest this brew, and it's about an 8 to 10 hour journey. It's usually done overnight, and it can affect people in different ways. It definitely drops the veil with the subconscious mind, so the walls are not there protecting you, and you're able to access that subconscious, and you're able to access those disassociated parts that you may or may not have, and opportunity to nurture them and integrate them and speak to them, like what did you experience, and kind of champion for that younger version. I mean, there's all different kinds of ways that people can experience ayahuasca. I mean, I've had my star family show up in one ceremony. I mean, it's like a huge spectrum of things that can happen during an ayahuasca ceremony, but people usually do it to go and do the healing. There's a lot of people that will do it to end addiction, but then sometimes they inevitably find themselves, they've stopped the drugs, they've stopped the alcohol, but then they're chasing the next ceremony. They're going and sitting with ayahuasca next month. And so they've just basically shifted their addiction. So it's a slippery slope when you do the psychedelics, because you can easily become addicted to the high because it makes you feel amazing. You're energetically purging things, but you have to integrate the lessons too. And that's actually something that I offer my clients and that's a huge soapbox that I have, a huge trigger when people don't integrate their ceremony and then they chase the next one.
Sure. Do you think you would have been able or capable to overcome your trauma without any external substances like ayahuasca or anything like that? Do you think you were capable of that?
Yeah. Yeah. Because I was by the time I sat with ayahuasca the first time, I had pretty much overcome the root of the trauma. There's always going to be disassociated parts. Like I always say that, we're walking around and we have this auric field and we have all of these little disassociated parts, in our auric field because we've shamed them, judged them, criticized them. And so they just kind of like break away, from us because they don't want to be there. They're not wanted. And I had already I've found the root cause, but there's always going to be parts because inevitably we're human. And you can't be 100% healed ever while you're still walking upright on this earth. It's not possible. So I had already kind of overcome the trauma, but the first ceremony, as I shared with you on our pre-call, is that I healed every single male relationship in that ceremony. And it was within a year that I stepped into the space of creating and holding space for men. And I needed to do that in order to stand in that integrity without the resentment, without the anxiety, without the anger towards just, the male sex, basically.
Good for you. All right. What do you do to maintain your resilience today?
Meditation daily and eating properly. I have a whole food, plant-based diet. I no longer drink alcohol. The only drugs that I dabble in is the ceremonial drugs, and I haven't really done any of that in a year and a half now. I don't plan to. And just nurturing myself, knowing, having the awareness that it's okay to be, and that you're not lazy for doing it, that you're not being productive, that we're human beings, not human doings. Does that resonate?
I got 4 final questions for you. You ready?
Okay, here we go.
One thing you're trying to believe about yourself that turned out to be a lie.
I'm sorry, can we repeat the question?
What's the one thing your trauma made you believe about yourself that turned out to be a lie?
That I wasn't worthy of love. Yeah.
There you go. Of course you are. Everybody is.
Yeah, absolutely.
What's the one thing you still struggle with, even after all the work?
People labeling others like a narcissist. Knowing what I know about how narcissists are created, people putting labels and attaching themselves as the victim rather than not doing the work on themselves, and realizing that that person is just a reflection of the dysfunction that you're experiencing currently in your life.
What's the advice you'd give to somebody that's been affected by the similar trauma that you've gone through?
That's interesting. So I'm about to start a group support program for that. Recognize that your father probably experienced the same thing that you did, and that now you're here to break that pattern, that you have been chosen to break that pattern, and that you're strong enough to break that pattern, and that you are worthy of time, you are worthy of love, you are worthy of attention, and remind yourself of that every single day.
What do you want to say, or what would you say to the person that you feel is most responsible for causing your trauma?
Thank you, because if I had not experienced that, I would not be sitting in this chair having this conversation with you today.
I agree. Nicole, it is absolutely clear that you have overcome your trauma. I want to thank you for somebody here today. And I sincerely hope that anybody that's been in your similar circumstances finds a way to overcome their trauma as well. Again, thank you so much. Please tell the people where they can find you and learn more about you.
The easiest way is to go to my website, NicoleHarmony.com. And actually, I wanted to give a freebie for your listeners. I have a shadow work journal that I would love to leave the link. It's printable. It's not writable. It's just printable. And that's a great way to start with like you said, the journaling. I know that was a big piece, and I've had this, so I'm not trying to copy, but it's always good to start journaling your thoughts. That way it gets out of your head, and it's no longer it's not renting space in your head.
Absolutely. I agree 100%. Go check out Nicole's stuff. I know she's got a lot of really good stuff going on for trauma survivors and people that are involved in trauma. And of course, come back and check out the High Intensity Truth podcast with me, your host, Eric. Thank you so much, Nicole, for coming on and being subjected to all of these questions. You did an amazing job. And we are excited to find out all the work you're going to do in the future.
Thanks. I just want to add trauma thriver.
That's right. Trauma thriver. I love it. All right.
Thank you.